Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And again, I want to thank you and the ranking member and your predecessor, Mr. Simpson, for really working hard to try and bring this program to an appropriate and successful conclusion. It's not been an easy task, obviously, and you're to be commended. I want to tell our friends we appreciate your help and your hospitality when we were out there. It was an eye-opening experience, and I felt like we got a lot of candid advice and a lot of history, and was very pleased with the level of cooperation we got. I think I'm going to have a series of questions, but I'm going to posit something. My big fear, and I suspect this committee's big fear, is if we get to the end of 2018 and we've doubled the budget, essentially, and that just means we're going to have another 40 years with a higher budget. That's how I would describe failure. There's some danger of that, given, and I don't point fingers at anybody here, but given the history of the program, there's every reason to believe that could happen. It can't be an in perpetuity housing program. We have housing programs. So if you will, give me an idea of where we are in the process, the number of families that are eligible, if you will, the scale of the task in front of you, and how fast are we proceeding in getting people appropriately taken care of and relocated?
We have, at the moment, 92 families that need relocation benefits. There are, at this moment, about 190 appeals. And in the past, the success ratio for an appeal has been about 1 in 10, about 10%. So we're thinking perhaps another 20 families, perhaps. So we're talking about a little over 100 families that will need benefits, and so we should be done. We'll have 60 this year. We'll have 60 contracts signed this year, and should be able to finish the rest.
That's good. Now, when we were had genuinely pleasure of visiting the area, we visited Navajo Community, East Mill, and Hopi Spider Mound, and obviously in those areas there were houses that had been built that were deficient. So it's one thing to take care of people that have been on a waiting list and moving along there. Tell me about where we're at with folks that were given houses in good faith and those houses weren't appropriately built. Where are we in resolving that? And are we going to have to go back and rebuild? Can things be repaired? Just how big a problem is that for us?
Well, this is not, well, that's a difficult question.
It was meant to be.
Yeah, meaning that I don't know how difficult it's going to be for you. But our program is not a perpetual housing program. Our program was intended to be over much more quickly than it is, and I think we all know that a variety of reasons why it has not. But one is that this is not a forced relocation program, so people frequently take their time to get through it. Number one. Number two, and probably more importantly, when this was first discussed in Congress, it was planned to be about 1,000 families. It's turned out to be over 3,800 families that have been certified. So that's one reason it's taken longer than it needs to. But we have the mechanism in place to build the houses and build them quickly, as long as we have the appropriations, and thank you for that. And so we should be able to have this done without any problem at all by the time frame we said we'd have it done.
Is there any provision or concern, again, we certainly heard complaints about this house wasn't appropriately built, that sort of thing. What are our obligations? Number one, is that true? And then there's a big difference between something that hasn't been cared for appropriately and something that was built defectively. So I know you got to sort of sort through that. But I'm interested in how big a problem that is, and how we resolve that portion so that, insofar as we can, people that think they were given homes that were poorly built or poorly sited, if there's legitimacy to that complaint, that they're resolved.
Any complaint we get, regardless of how old it is or how old the home is, we will go out and inspect without question. If it is a latent defect, meaning a defect we did not spot when we were building the home, we will fix it immediately. If it's under warranty, we will fix it, and we will fix it immediately. Generally, that's not the case. Generally, for an older home, it's what we refer to as homeowner maintenance. And folks are expected to maintain their homes like anyone else would. And so all the houses that we have built in my tenure there have met all international codes. So there's not been, at least any evidence that I'm aware of faulty construction.
Yeah, and I don't think there has been in terms of during your tenure and the people that were there. There was certainly some concerns that predate you. It's a problem you inherited, so I don't want you to think this was directed at you or any of your current employees. But we did see some instances, and so I'm curious how those cases get resolved. Is there an appeal process for that, so that there's some adjudication of this, if you will?
Well, when they come to us, and that's why I was saying, and I was not trying to be flip, that I'm not sure what problem you may have, because when they come to us, you've come to us with a problem, we immediately inspect it.
Okay.
If we are responsible, we will fix it immediately. If not, then we will tell you exactly what has caused the problem, what you need to do to fix the problem, and that's the end of our responsibility.
Okay. There's also, as you know, and you've been generous with your time, I'll finish with this question. An appeals process here, which, as I understand it, will last beyond your tenure, assuming we reach the guidelines or the target dates that we're all collectively shooting for here. Tell me how that works, how anything that, that there's a legitimate appeal gets resolved once the office itself goes out of existence, and who would be responsible for, if there were a judgment rendered, paying that judgment. I think that's sort of what Ms. McCollum was one of her concerns too. We don't want to just end the office. We do want to discharge the function fairly and appropriately. We want to make sure if there is some aftermath, if you will, as we wind things up, that gets taken care of, and we do indeed end the effort.
Our plan is to have all of the homes built by the time we are out of business, to have everyone have gone through the appeals process by the time we are finished. However, you are correct. There will be a 6-year time that they can appeal to the federal courts that determination. And as we've discussed in the past, that's going to have to be some kind of responsibility of, and we haven't quite figured that one out yet, but it's going to be Justice Department, Department of Interior. I'm not sure how that's going to work. And we've also talked about the possibility of having some kind of a trust fund set up to accommodate if there were to be.
Well, just out of curiosity, and I direct this much to the staff or to my colleagues, is this something like the judgment fund or something would be in a position to cover? Because that's a very substantial fund, and it's a pretty well-established method as to how we handle those. And what you don't want to leave is people hanging out there or forcing BIA or somebody else to pick up some obligation that they had not anticipated that diverts funds from someplace else.
Yeah, gentlemen would yield. I'm hopeful that as we go through this process over the next 2.5 years, the legitimate questions that are being asked are addressed early, to get that out there. And I'm sure even after this office closes that we probably will have to move some money over to the BIA to carry on some of these legacy responsibilities. We were out there at Spider Mound, and it seemed to me, just looking at it from my old job as a builder, that there were some subsidence issues around there, and that there may be some legitimate concern over that, over and above, immediate construction remedies that you do as a normal course of business. But that may or may not be the case. I'm not sure. We'll leave that to the experts to decide.
East Mill, sir.
What's that?
East Mill, not Spider.
Excuse me, East Mill. And I get these places all mixed up. So I think we need to make sure we have a budget when we conclude this, where we don't delay concluding your job, but move that responsibility to someone else, where we can make sure that happens. So we need to work with you to make sure we have sufficient funds to move over to the BIA, to make sure whether the judgment fund is involved and all the rest of it, so we can answer those questions when we move along.
I yield back my time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.